right, once again, you're listening to Panzer Unleashed. And for years now, Americans were told that safety was automatic. And we were told that threats were distant, the borders were secure, and institutions would handle the hard problems quietly in the background. And that belief didn't collapse overnight, people. And it didn't collapse because families failed. It collapsed because systems failed. And it's about what happens when responsibility shifts back where it has already belonged, in the hands of individuals, families, and communities who refuse to sleepwalk through this uncertainty. And to the citizen soldiers of the Iron Voice Society, this is a reminder of who you are and why discipline matters. And let's go ahead and start with the truth, because that makes people uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable truths tend to be the most important ones. And you don't outsource survival. You never truly could. And for a long time, people were simply conditioned to believe they didn't need to think about it. They were told danger was rare, that it's contained and someone else's responsibility. The borders, agencies, and policies were supposed to manage those risks so families could remain detached from reality. And now that illusion is gone, my friend. And not because everyday people failed, but because large systems failed to do what they promised. And when systems fail, responsibility doesn't vanish. It moves downstream a little bit. It lands on families, it lands on communities, it lands on individuals who are willing to pay attention. And that shift doesn't require fear. It requires readiness. Readiness is calm, measured, and deliberate. And fear makes people reckless. I've said this before. And preparation makes people steady. And when you're prepared, you don't panic. You don't lash out, and you don't imagine threats are non-existent. You simply remain aware of the environment you are responsible for. And the reality we now live in is one where uncertainty exists inside the country, not just outside it. When vetting collapses and accountability weakens, blind spots form. Blind spots don't mean everyone is dangerous, but they do mean that danger has more room to hide. And you don't need to know exactly who poses a threat to understand that the threats exist. Responsible people don't chase individuals, jump to conclusions, or even act on rumors. They observe reality as it is, not as they wish it would be. That observation is based on behavior, incidents, and patterns, not assumptions about people. This distinction matters. And this conversation is not about race, religion, or background. It's about intent, behavior, and the consequences of systems that no longer verify either effectively. And every functional nation on earth understands this principle, even when it's unpopular to say it out loud, especially nowadays. And protecting your family is not about extremism. Being alert is not hatred, and preparation is not aggression. It is responsibility. And no federal agencies, no matter how large, was ever designed to personally safeguard every household in the nation. And ICE, DHS, and other institutions operate within the limits of manpower, the funding, and political restraints. And that is not an insult. It is reality, which means families must adopt a mindset of self-reliance without slipping into that self-righteousness. And readiness begins at home. It means understanding what normal looks like in your environment so that deviations stand out naturally. And it means being attentive to changes in activity, routines, and patterns that don't align with what has historically existed in your area. And this is not about watching people. This is about understanding environments. And professionals in every field operate this way. Firefighters, they notice changes in heat and structures. Investigators notice inconsistencies in timelines and records, okay? It requires attention, people. And when something genuinely unusual occurs, responsible citizens document facts accurately and calmly. Dates, times, locations, and like I said, every event matters, Clear records protect credibility, prevent misinformation, and ensure that innocent people are not dragged into baseless accusations, okay? And documentation is not harassment, okay? I do it every fucking day here on Cartel Corner, okay? It's not confrontation. It is not action for action's sake, okay? It is the preservation of facts in a world where memory fades and narratives shift, okay? And prepared citizens do not escalate situations, no. They do not seek conflict. They understand that discipline protects them, their families, and their communities far more effectively than impulse ever could. And family protection is not about toughness or theatrics. It is about stabilizing. It's about keeping your family clear-headed. And basically, you have to be ready under that pressure. They need routines, communication, and plans that do not rely on hope or luck. And do the people in your household know how to respond during emergencies? Do they know where to go, who to contact, or even how to stay calm when stress rises? These are not radical questions, people. They are the responsibilities of adulthood. Real readiness is quiet. It doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't fantasize about worst-case scenarios. It simply exists in the background, maintained through consistency and awareness. And this is why citizen soldiers endure while these vigilantes burn out. And these vigilantes chase the action. Citizen soldiers focus on outcomes. Outcomes require patience, restraint, and the ability to think long-term rather than emotionally. You have to check yourself. And this is also why communities matters. Isolated individuals spiral. Unless you're surrounded by the enemy, then that's understandable. But a disciplined community corrects that course. And the Iron Voice Society exists to reinforce standards in your neighborhoods, everywhere, in your family's lives. It's all about accountability and lawful awareness, not about that fear-driven reactions, because iron sharpens iron at the end of the day. And these standards protect credibility. Discipline preserves longevity. And the greatest danger is not that uncertainty exists. The greatest danger is pretending it doesn't until reality forces the lesson at the worst possible moment. And prepared families don't panic. Prepared communities don't fracture. Prepared citizens remain alert without becoming hostile. They simply do the fucking work, people. Once again, this is Panzer Unleashed. And tonight it wasn't about, fear accusations, okay? It was about responsibility, awareness, and readiness in an era where protection can no longer be fully outsourced. And to the citizen soldiers of the Iron Voice Society, stay disciplined, stay lawful, and stay clear-headed. Calm vigilance will always outlast panic, and preparation will always outperform denial. So once again, my friends, protect your families, document the facts, not assumptions. Refuse compliancy without surrendering your humanity. Once again, this is Scott Panzer Paulson reporting live here from Hack Studios, signing off.